And I'll put in all the music at the beginning and all that stuff. It'll sound real good on the podcast, but right now we're going dry.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Bite Meat podcast. I'm always excited about this podcast. You guys know me, John Lopez, and I'm one of the sickos when it comes to barbecue and meats and cooking and grilling and tailgating and all that. Especially excited about this. Now, we've had all kinds of great guests. If you haven't heard the podcast, be sure to subscribe. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. On Podbean is where we host it, so we always recommend that, but also iTunes, Spotify, literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can subscribe. And of course, it always is brought to you every week by our fine friends over at Texas Star Grill Shop. And the reason I'm especially excited about this one is because I'm a big time customer of HeartBrand beef. And I can tell you, we were chatting before we went live here on the podcast with Jordan Beeman from HeartBrand beef. I was telling him, yeah, man, it makes a difference. It makes a big, big difference. But first of all, Jordan, thanks for joining us. And I know where we're going to start is really a very fascinating part of y'all's story that you guys weren't necessarily intimately involved, but ultimately you became a big part of that story. So, like I said, first, thanks for coming on the podcast. But HeartBrand beef has an incredible backstory, and then we're going to go from there on why it's so different. But tell us that if you can.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me today. Very excited to be here. So the quick history is, and especially how it's been told to us, that a small group of cattle came over in 1994 due to a unique opportunity in the Trade Act of 1992. So, they were kind of able to apply for export, get the cattle to quarantine, and then flew the cattle over on a specially equipped Boeing 747 and made their journey over. Yes, sir. Made their journey through Long Island and then finally made it to Texas to where they are today. So a pretty small group of cattle, somewhere 13,
now from
15.
Where exactly? I know our listeners are wondering where exactly they come from.
Yeah, originally came over from Japan, kind of the Kumamoto region of Japan. And that, to our knowledge, is the only breeding group of Akaushi that had ever left Japan. In 1976, two Akaushi bulls came over, Judo and Rushaw came over as well, with the original two black bulls came over as well. But that, to our knowledge, that's the only time that Akaushi have really ever left Japan.
Yeah.
So we're super fortunate to have the ability to work with that original main breeding nucleus of cattle and still have semen frozen on all those original bulls today. And
oh, really?
More, yeah, for sure. So still have semen on all those same original bulls. Big Al was born here. We still consider him a foundation. Yeah, Big Al, Shigemaru, Tamamaru, and Hikari. And then Judo and Rushaw, the ones that came over in 76, we still have semen frozen on those and use those bulls as well.
Dang. So obviously you rattled off their names so quickly. They hold a special place in the Beeman family. And I should say the Beeman family owners, operators, running HeartBrand beef. I should say that. And that's why you were on here. But I'm sure you've got a special place in your heart for Big Al and company.
For sure. No, they're truly the Mount Rushmore of cattle to us. So yeah, we actually have a life-size mount of Big Al in the office.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so being the first full-blood bull born outside of Japan, we thought he was pretty special. So we have a life-size mount of him, and he's the kind of the number one attraction. People always want to have their picture taken with him. So Big Al's the backdrop of many pictures.
And y'all are, just to be specific, somewhat Central Texas is where your ranch is?
Yeah. So we're kind of Flatonia, Harwood area, kind of halfway between Houston and San Antonio, just right on either side of Interstate 10.
And people can come by and say, hey, or no?
Yeah. We'd like a reservation if you're going to come to the ranch. But mostly just have bull buyers and kind of some of our retail type, larger retail type customers come out to the ranch, but then also have a little small shop here in Flatonia that people stop by and buy meat at. It's nothing cool like a Texas Star Grill Shop or anything, but do have a little bit of meat here available for sale as well. We catch a lot of hunters leaving Houston, heading out to the lease a lot of the time, stop by, but
I go by there all the time. I might have to stop by myself. So on this podcast, we've talked to, name a legend, a legendary pitmaster, Aaron Franklin, Leonard Botello, Grant Pinkerton, Chris Shepard, who's more of a restaurant, Chris Beard award-winning chef, the Fegises from Feges Barbecue. Just go down the list, and they all say variations of the same thing, because we're talking about technique and smoking and wood and all this other stuff. they all start in the same place, the meat. The most important part for all our pit masters, I mean, they go to extremes, as I'm sure you know, you probably work with some of these, to make sure they get the right cut of meat, the right beef. And so I want to mention that, because some people say Akaushi, I've heard it. What is it exactly? What separates it?
Yeah, so Akaushi is a specific breed of cattle that originated from Japan. And what Akaushi, what we feel do better than anybody, is they put the fat on the inside. So they put marbling into the beef. And by most accounts, marbling is what gives you flavor. So marbling is where tenderness and where flavor come from. And we think Akaushi put that marbling in better than anything else, which allows it to be the most flavorful and most tender cut of meat, type of meat that you can get. And then also it's got a very specific type of oleic acid as well, which we also feel adds to that deep, buttery, rich flavor that comes from the Akaushi.
And it's all genetic, right? I mean, that's why
it's mostly genetic with feed, though.
Right.
Yeah, so it starts with the genetics. So we couldn't do what we do today with a normal breed of cattle, but it starts with genetics, and then we complement it with feeding.
I want to say, and I don't have it in front of me, so correct me if I'm wrong. There were, I believe, something like 2 bulls and 6 or 8 cows that came over originally. What is that number close to accurate? And what is the
close,
number?
Yeah, a little bit more.
A little bit more. And what is the number of head you have now?
Yeah, so we have about 2,500 breeding age full blood females, and then we have about 19,000 head on feed.
Okay.
So what we have on feed is designated going to the meat program, and those females are the ones that are kind of the breeding nucleus that keep the breed going. So our basic business model is we sell a full blood Akaushi bull to a commercial cattleman in hopes of buying their calves back. So we buy those calves back that are DNA verified to be 50% Akaushi or greater. We feed them out a high energy ration consisting of a lot of corn, and then we custom process and sell that meat.
This is so fascinating to me, and I know our listeners as well. You know, everything I've always learned and known about beef is, you know, Texas is really, really good. Obviously, you guys are great, but Texas is really, really good. But a lot of times the heat becomes a factor because, you know, you get those Midwest bulls, they don't have to deal with quite as much heat. So what separates Akaushi from being affected by that?
Yeah, so number one, they're red. So being red allows them to handle the heat better. They're a pretty thinly hided animal, and they're one of the most southernly developed Boss Taurus breeds of cattle. So it's you know, what is it, August 5th or something in Texas, and it's about 100 degrees outside, and they're not going to like it, right? No animal's going to like it. They all going to wish it was they all wish it was 72 degrees and sunny, but that's just not the life for us here in Texas. But the Akaushi actually can handle the heat pretty well, and we think they can handle it as good as any Boss Taurus animal can handle the heat. So they were designed for it over the long term when they were developed in Japan. However, we do feed our cattle in the Texas Panhandle, where there's much less humidity, where the evenings get a little bit cooler. So we realize that kind of the heat and the humidity is not optimal for the cattle. So we get them to the Texas Panhandle to finish and to feed them. And that's also where the grain is and also where the meat plants are. So where we're at in kind of Fayette, Gonzales County is where the cow-calf, you know, kind of reigns supreme, right? Like we're in the top cow-calf counties in the state of Texas. So by saying cow-calf is saying where you got a mama, she's getting bred by a bull and she's giving us a baby, and that bull and that calf is weaned off at about 7 months of age. So that's cow calf here. And then we'll send them to the feedlot when they're about 12 months of age for that final finishing.
I mean, you guys have truly changed the industry. I mean, I'm not trying to, you know, pander here, but the industry has changed, and it is a name now that is synonymous with the better cut of beef. When you guys came in, I believe you said 2006. Did you imagine that this was going to be what ultimately happened?
Yeah, honestly, we did. I mean, my dad's been in the meat business his entire life, has built branded meat programs his entire life, and he really saw the potential, you know, as he was trying the steaks and as seeing the cattle. And when he whole started out, the whole goal has been to revolutionize the meat business. So, I mean, I really think, he's kind of a bigger than life figure, a real dreamer, and he really saw the ability from, I don't know about day one, but way before anybody else did, and, you know, kind of Field of Dreams, and he knew that that he was going to be able to build it. And the meat was able to get a repeat sale. And that's
Yeah.
the thing that he would always say, we've got to put out a good product that gets a repeat sale. And that's what we focus on. And our mission today is to provide the best beef eating experience possible.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that drives us today, from the start of the animal to how we feed it to how we handle the meat, is all around providing the best beef eating experience possible.
Now, your dad, Ronald, or does it go by Ron?
Ronald,
I
full
call him
Ronald.
Ronald. I call him Ronald. He is a
Yeah.
piece of work. I've talked to him on the phone. Definitely that. But I'm guessing that you and your dad have stood behind a barbecue pit a time or two.
For sure. Yes, sir.
Here and there. I'm sure you've done that. So the toughest piece of meat to cook, and we've talked about it here, is brisket. And I see your briskets in that refrigerated cooler at Texas Star Grill Shop, and I just pick. A lot of times I'll tell Gus or Rick or somebody, hey, pick me out a good one. I just trust them, but I could just reach in there and grab anything, and I know it's going to be a good piece of meat. The brisket seems to be where you guys have really separated yourself. I know the steaks, everything is awesome, but is that where you kind of made your mark?
It's a big one because in Texas, because barbecue's king. But I think we've really kind of started our mark with the New York strip. And to me, a New York strip is the test of a quality piece, because it's one solid muscle. So you're getting it, and that's where I go to. But the brisket's good too. And what's so tough about a brisket is you're taking a piece of meat that's not normally supposed to be tender.
Yeah.
So you're adding time and temperature to hopefully get a piece of meat that's tender. And there's the recipe of just cooking it, whatever you want to say, 10 hours at 250 doesn't automatically mean that a brisket's going to be tender. I mean, so much of it comes down to the feel and the texture of that individual brisket itself. But to me, the king of all cuts is the New York strip. And if that's our go-to, and that's if we're going to try meat next to other pieces of meat, that's what we think is what I go for.
Trust me, I don't disagree. I've seen man, enough of y'all's steaks in New York strip, etc. So when you're picking out a brisket, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the guys that are doing it, what are you really looking for?
Yeah, I look for marbling, and then just overall size and texture of a brisket. So I don't claim to be a pit master. I'm not a competitive cook, and honestly, sometimes my ADD of cooking a 12-hour brisket to me can kind of get the better of me. So I tend to be more of a direct heat griller, get something cooked in at kind of under a 15-minute cook time.
Yeah.
But for me, I look for a big chunk of brisket, something that's got quite a bit of fat on it all the way through, and then something that I think is going to carry the marbling all the way through as well.
Now, you mentioned the oleic acid.
Oleic acid.
Oleic acid, and I was reading about that as well before I hopped on here with you. It says that it actually makes the cuts of meat healthier. How is that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so how I understand how it makes it healthier is our beef has a positive ratio of mono unsaturated to saturated fatty acids, and as well a significant source of oleic acid. So the easiest way for me to explain it to somebody like myself who who's kind of a little more cowboy than scientist is take 1 pound of our ground beef, cook that ground beef, take 1 pound of normal ground beef that you get at your regular local grocery store, cook that ground beef, and strain those fats and oils into a coffee cup and let them cool to room temperature. And our beef will be more soluble at room temperature. So turn it sideways, ours will move, and the traditional won't move. So that's just the easiest way to see that the beef has a more type unsaturated fats than the saturated fats than traditional.
That makes sense to me.
So it's got a positive ratio of mono unsaturated to saturated fatty acids.
And one of the things, and I mentioned pitmasters, I know you deal with a lot at the highest level, but one of the things that they often say is they want to go to a big time producer of beef like yourself, but they also don't want to go where it's just thousands and thousands. It's just sort of like a treadmill. Why is that? And I know you guys, you said 2,500. That's not. I mean, that might sound like a lot. That's not huge, is it?
No, not at all. So I mean, just to put it into perspective, our country slaughters somewhere about 100,000 fed steer and heifer a day, give or take, just for round numbers. We're doing a day, and we're doing less than 100 a day on average. So I mean, we're doing a little less than 400 a week. So I mean, just say, what is that, 80 or 70, 80. So I mean, we're doing, however many times you have to move that decimal to get to
Mhm.
somebody. So it's really a challenge to be able for somebody like us that's a family owned business to grow a meat program that's large enough to be able to get enough briskets
Mhm.
to somebody to where we can have enough briskets to where we can get enough briskets to cover a barbecue restaurant, right? To
Yeah.
the biggest of the big times, we can't. I mean, I want to say not even the biggest of the big time, but somebody
Yeah.
who has a barbecue restaurant that's open 7 days a week, we probably can't supply them that's doing large volume.
Yeah. So there's got to be some real competition. There's some real negotiating going on. Like these guys want to get your beef, and you gotta kind of balance everything out, right?
For sure. Yeah. Like, so we started with Cadillac there in Dallas. I mean, started when they were open 1 or 2 days a week, and now they're open, I think, 4 days a week. And luckily we've grown with them, and they've kind of grown with us, and been able to get them briskets very consistently. And then we're able to pick up, like the few retail customers that we have, and get them briskets. But there's a time where we have a real issue to where you have to tell somebody, unfortunately, we just don't have enough, because
Mm-hmm.
supply and demand in this business is really difficult. So people always ask me, what's the most difficult parts about this business? There's two
Yeah.
things. It's cash flow, because it's a very slow business. It's very similar to the wine business, how we've got
Mm-hmm.
to grow our product, and our sales grow like this, and then our needs
Yep.
grow like this, and our sales grow below it. So you got to have the product before you can sell it. And at best case, it's a 12-year turnaround. I'm sorry, 12-month turnaround to
Mm-hmm.
get to where we buy back an animal and then get it finished fed, and get it back through. And then secondarily matching supply to demand, because
Yeah.
the animal gives us about the same percent every week. Like, it might change by like very small percentage points, but the
Mm-hmm.
orders don't always come in the same percentages that animal supply comes in. So we're long on something some weeks, and we're short on something some weeks. So it's tough, because remember, all we do is sell Akaushi. It's not like
Yeah.
there's a lot of other branded beef programs out there that maybe what you're insinuating with, to why some of the people don't like to work with some of the big ones that have a name and put
Yeah.
their name on a spec.
Yeah.
So if all I did was contract with a large meat packer and say, hey, I need meat that matches this quantity, and I'll tell you what I need, and then you put it in my boxes, well, then
Yeah.
that gets much simpler, because they don't own cows. They don't have much inventory, and they just tell the plant what they need made,
Mm-hmm.
and they put it in their boxes.
Yeah.
But for us, we take it one huge step further, and we're actually breed specific by DNA. We raise a lot of the cattle. We finish feed the cattle, and then we contract, slaughter, and fab those cattle and sell the meat. So we just have so much more invested in that animal, so much more time, and really, frankly, just so much more knowledge and care, and knowing of the animal, and why we think our product can be more consistent, more superior than your normal high quality beef. I'm not saying just normal commodity
Yeah.
choice, but if you want to say normal, then USDA prime beef.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just
But
took the. Go ahead.
I mean, that's how small it is, right? Like, so
Yeah.
USDA prime runs 8%, something like that, 7-8% of a beef supply that's killing 100,000 a day. So I mean, you get that to 7,000 head a day. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just to see how much smaller of a subset we are of high quality beef.
Yeah. You just took my next question right out of my mouth, because a lot of our listeners, of course, we would encourage them to go and get a great piece of meat like what you guys do, like what I buy consistently. I mean, once you're there, you don't go back. But they also don't know if they can always get it, and so it's about the grades of beef. Help our listeners out. Like, what are they looking for in terms of on the packaging, on the beef
Yeah,
itself? What should
that's
they
a
look
wonderful
for?
question. So the USDA itself grades beef prime, choice, and select. Prime
Mm-hmm.
being the highest. So there's a few things that go in what creates a prime animal. It's got to meet specific age requirements. It's got to appear to be under 28 months of age. It's got to be a nice cherry red. The fat's got to be a nice pretty white. But the most important thing that the grader's looking at is how much marbling, how much intermuscular fat it has at the 12th and 13th rib, which the
Mm-hmm.
12th and 13th rib is where it splits from strip to ribeye, and it's roughly right at the middle of the animal. So if you take a look at the animal and you were to go right down the middle of its back, that's
Mm-hmm.
about the 12th and 13th rib. So that grader looks there to see how much marbling it has. And the animals that have a lot of marbling, have the most marbling, the top 8% of marbling on average, those get graded USDA prime. And then the
Mm-hmm.
middle grade is USDA choice. And that grade's somewhere about, it can vary a lot more from plant to plant, but we'll just say for purposes of this conversation, 60-70% of the cattle grade USDA choice. And then what would that be? The bottom 30%,
Yeah.
20 something,
25. Yeah.
25% grade USDA select, and select has the least amount of marbling.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at a grocery store, most of the time they'll say if it's USDA Prime, USDA Choice, then USDA Select. And then there's branded beef programs who try and take it a step further. So we'll take that prime type marbling, and then we'll take it a little step further, make sure that's DNA verified HeartBrand, make sure the marbling matches our specific criteria, and then we'll put it under our brand.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other things, there's a lot of branded Angus programs out there, and those can be anywhere from top upper third Angus to anywhere
Mm-hmm.
to really just being Angus and not being a grade specific. So by merely saying something's Angus doesn't mean it's marbled.
Gotcha.
You have to further look and see what kind of marbling scale does it have to make sure that it's marbling. So I just think the most important thing that we can look at when we're looking for a good cut of meat, a whole muscle cut of meat, like if you're looking for a ribeye strip, if you're looking for a brisket, if you're looking for some short ribs to barbecue it's got to have a high level of marbling.
Yeah.
So
it's incredible. I mean, this is really fascinating and exactly what I was hoping to talk about. And then there's the aspect of you've got a standard, that you have to keep. So there ain't no rushing anything. there ain't no,
sure.
Making sure, you get this order filled or whatever, you turn them over. Like, what's the process like from the time, you mentioned the calf to like, what does that calf go through before it gets to our plate, to the retailer?
Yeah. So you want it on my process or the process?
Yes, yours.
Of conventional?
Yours, because that's what I think is most fascinating, the care that you guys take.
Yeah, so most beef is very segregated. Like the different parts and pieces are very segregated. We're a little, from cow calf to the meat plant. We do both. So we're much more vertically integrated. So calf is born day one, stays with its mama out on grass, nice, pretty green pastures. I mean, for this early August, it's the prettiest, the greenest, the best of pastures I've ever looked. And we wish it could look like this all the time, right? So mama and baby are out there enjoying life in the shade of the oak trees, eating the green grass. And then about 7 months of age, we wean the calf. So remove the calf from its mother, kind of like going to college. And we wean the calf and then start the calf out to be able to live on its own, to be able to get its food on its own, find its water on its own, kind of begin its own life. So we background them locally, usually at the ranch, until they are
and
about.
This isn't the Panhandle?
No, this still's all at the ranch.
Here.
It's still locally, yes, sir, or wherever the ranch might be. We have ranches a few other spots, but and then background them usually at the ranch till they weigh about, that we wean them at 500-600 pounds. They'll weigh 600-700 pounds, and then they'll go to the Panhandle, which is also happens to be about 10 to 12 months of age. And then we ship them to the Panhandle, and then that's where they get put on full feed, and they'll be on full feed for about 300 days, somewhere like that, maybe 365 days, maybe a full year. And then the cattle go to slaughter and fab. So, and then from there, we ship the product directly to whomever it might be, whether it's a food service operation, distributor type person, whether it's a big box retailer, or even then getting to Texas Star Grill Shops distribution points.
Yeah. So that goes about 28 months, you said.
Yeah, right. No, under. For prime, they need to be under 28 months. Our average is about 24 months.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I know I'm just bombarding you here, but this is stuff that's going to help me and our listeners, because as good, for lack of a better word, as I think I am, I'm not like these pitmasters that we have on the podcast, but I think I'm pretty good at what I do. I still don't know. Like, help me out. Like, what you're feeding them. I see grain, I see grass, I see this and that. And a lot of them brag, grain fed this, grass fed that. What should we know about that?
Okay. So I'm a marbling guy. So just to start out, I think marbling's good, and I think that's where we get our flavor from. So that's where where I'm getting my opinion from. So we finish our animals on a high energy ration, mainly consisting of corn.
Okay.
So, and once you feed an animal extra energy that it needs to grow, then it has enough energy to put that into marbling. So we finish ours on grain. So we start them out on grass. They start out on the green pastures when they're with their mom till they weigh, 500-600 pounds, then background them kind of on more of a pasture, kind of half pasture, half getting them used to feed. And then we'll finish them on that high energy ration. So we feed them that energy so they're able to get more marbling and what we think gets them more flavor and more tenderness.
Yeah, that's great. Now, you said something earlier that had me thinking too. You said it's kind of like wine. Does that extend all the way to specific years, like the 2018 such and such, the
No,
2021 such and such?
we and we it doesn't. No,
Yeah.
because I guess the weather doesn't affect it quite as much as what it does in wine. So, and we have tried this time.
Hmm.
We've even frozen different steaks, and we've even had some up to like 6 years just to see how long they'd last in a freezer and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
we've not been able to distinguish it by year.
Hmm.
The reason why I think it is because as a bovine, a cow has a rumen, so they eat this high volumes of forage grass. So they're designed to eat high volumes of lower quality forage and turn that into something that they can grow. And that's why a cow, slightly off topic here,
Hmm.
but if you'd allow me for a second, that's why a cow is in such need for our ecosystem.
Hmm.
Cows live on areas that we can't grow crops. And
Yeah.
somewhere of the world, take out the water and just come to the land, 80% of the world cannot grow a crop.
Yeah.
So the cows live on those areas and they eat that grass and they turn that low quality forage, a lot of cellulose, they
Hmm.
turn that into protein.
Okay.
So that's what's so unique about a cow and what's unique about the rumen in that stomach of a cow. And to further why I think that it's a little bit, a cow can handle more in a more wider variety than what a wine can, and why we don't have vintages by specific years.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that the care that you guys take to your meat translates to the grass, even like all the details of what you're putting in these animals' stomachs.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. We spend a lot of time on grass. So we start out as grass farmers first, right? Like we've got to produce good, high quality forage to sustain our cows for sure. But we do finish them on grain at the end, right? Like
Yeah.
we feel like that grain is what gives that meat that rich, deep, kind of beefy, sweet, buttery flavor that comes in that Akaushi steak.
We're all getting hungry. Yeah, you just mentioned steak. That's the next thing I wanted to ask you about. Steaks is anybody can do it. Anybody can ruin it. Anybody can make a great one. Like when you're offering your steaks and you got them all lined up. Are you just looking for the same thing, marbling, or are you looking for the thickness? Are you looking for the cut? Take us through, like, these are the steaks that I would say you got to start with.
Yeah, so I start out with a strip. So I start with a New York strip, kind of 14 ounces, inch and a quarter thick,
Hmm.
high degree of marbling. And I don't like a lot of outside fat on the steak, and I don't like a lot of the connective tissue on the outside of the steak. So if you're coming to eat a steak on at my house, I might even cut that 14-ounce steak in half and then
Hmm.
trim the outside, a little bit of the sinew and that kind of tough gristle that can be
Yeah.
found on a strip. Because when you come to my house, you're just eating a steak by the bite. I'm not selling it to you by the pound. So
Hmm.
so when I put something on your plate, I want you to have it all very nice, edible. And then what I think is the outside pieces of the steak sometimes can have the most flavor because they get the most tenderness, but that they also get in contact with the most heat. So
Yes.
so they get that most char and a lot of where that, and I like that char and kind of smoke
Just a
flavor
little
because
bit of, yeah.
yeah. So if that has a piece of gristle on the outside and you're cutting it off, well, I think you're losing some of that flavor. So I
Hmm.
like to have that to where you get to incorporate that in your bite. And
Hmm.
then I like a ribeye. I mean, I like all the fat and I like the spinalis on the top of the ribeye for sure. That's a go-to cut for me. I mix it in. I actually just took a ribeye out of the freezer when we were packing out boxes today that just called my name. So I'm having ribeye tonight.
That
Um,
one. I want that
that
one.
no, that one, right? Yeah. So that is the benefit, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
so we're actually the opposite of Bluebell, though. We sell all we can and eat the rest.
Yeah.
So I got the rest of what we're gonna have. But yeah,
Yeah.
and then the other cut that I really like to go to is an outside skirt. Uh,
Okay.
I think the flavor that comes in that outside skirt, the marbling and the tenderness, and it's just even just a richer, more bold flavor. And pound for pound, I think carries the most punch out of any cut there is the outside
And
skirt.
that's I'm with you on that, actually. Obviously I like a great steak, but something about that thinner cut, the flavor just seems to be all flavor.
Yeah,
It's
so
just
much more
so,
char, more
yeah, so
seasoning,
much
a
more
little
char.
saltier. Yeah.
Yes, so much easier, etc. I do, before we get you out of here, I do want to mention or ask you about the industry. I mean, this is not an easy thing to do. You guys have, have
Yeah.
have got it dialed in, but the industry. Have you ever thought about, like, doing, expanding more from Akaushi, and what is the industry like right now for cattle?
Yeah, yeah, so the industry for cattle is it's a pretty tough industry, honestly. It's a lot of long days. It's
Mhm.
a lot of weather, and the environment plays such a huge part in it. We're super lucky to be green and have quite a bit of grass. But if you would have came back last August,
Mhm.
you wouldn't have seen the same
There
thing
was
in
no
the
rain.
ranch. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty, and it's kind of unfortunate that there's not a whole lot of young people coming back into the business. I'm trying to remember what the stat was, but the average stat is that the average rancher's 58, 60, somewhere in that neighborhood. So,
Mhm.
so there's not just a whole lot my generation getting back into it. So that's something that we have to be cognizant on, and something that we're part of the NCBA and other people that they, just try and continue to work on. But right now I think the cattle business is really good. We still have a lot of people trying to raise great beef and
Mhm.
really enjoy it, and enjoy the way of life. It's really, it is a career, but it's just so much more of a way of life. Being out on the land, being out with the animals, it's probably just a little bit slower pace.
Mhm.
Don't have near the traffic, don't have the concrete. So it's just a great way for us to raise our family, and fortunate enough to be out on the ranch and really live off the land, but
Yeah.
doing it in a little bit higher way, somewhere we
Yeah.
still have a brand, somewhere
Good.
we're still able to have really fun product, and really something that just gets us excited to get up and do every day, just to provide what we think is the best beef eating experience possible. And that's
Well,
what we strive for every day.
yeah, I'm not going to disagree, but got to get out some outreach, man. Get over to A&M and tell them it's not what all the things that you hear about. Like there is a way to make some money and be happy, huh?
Yeah, yeah, we're trying to. It's just it's a slow capital intensive business, and tough for a young person to get into it. I'm fortunate enough to be the fifth generation cattle rancher. So
Yeah.
so I've had a hell of a head start. I've had a lot of acres that the family's own, that have been fortunate to have been inherited down, and a lot of cattle to start out with. My dad's still involved in it, just a lot of strong family support that if I wouldn't have had, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, because I'd be working in town doing some
Yeah.
normal job. I
Yeah,
mean,
we don't want that.
honestly,
We want you to stay
yeah,
right where you are.
yeah.
What last thing? I said last thing last time I lied
No,
because
no, no worries. We're
you
good.
got me thinking about something else here. In terms of the cattle and the muscle and the movement of the cattle. I mean, how much
Mhm.
do you sort of quote unquote exercise them? Do you just let them live their life? How does that work
Yeah,
to
so
get
we
the
don't
best?
do
Again, to get the best beef.
yeah, so we don't directly exercise them. Let them do their own exercise. But
Mhm.
what we do is we spread out water, food, and shade. So food's in the front of the pen, water's in the middle generally, and shade's in the back. So to get out the animals, to get them walking, and get them some exercise. We don't want them to have too much exercise to where
Yeah.
they actually walk too much and burn off the fat, but we still want them to have quite a bit of exercise to where they still build that muscle, still get out, and still use those joints. So there's no exercise schedule or routine,
Hmm.
but more so we do it in developing the pen, and developing the I don't know if you call it structure, but
Yeah.
the resources within the pen, so the
Hmm.
animal has to get out and get adequate exercise.
This has been great. I do want to get this from you because I know our listeners are thinking, well, I got to get me some of that. There are a lot of people. I mean, you getting HeartBrand out there. I know it's, as you said, it's limited, but it's out there. Where can
Yeah, for
people,
sure.
get a
Yeah,
hold
so
of this outside of what I was talking about?
Texas Star Grill Shop's a great spot, and then we also have a website, heartbrandbeef.com, and have a full line of products on there that we can ship anywhere in the United States as well.
Man, and I saw you had a little special going. I was looking at the website the other day. I
Yeah,
just
we
shut
try
them.
to do something. Yeah, we
Yeah.
try to do some kind of special, switch it out. Just enough to maybe get that new customer over the edge to try and get
Hmm.
something good, because we want to have a chance to try this beef too. I mean, the funnest thing that I do is get out and hand somebody an Akaushi piece of meat and just let them try it for the first time, and just
Yeah.
see the way that they're blown away the first time they try that steak, and they get that tenderness, and they get that flavor, and they just get that pop right in their mouth,
Yeah.
and get that flavor. It's just something that we really enjoy doing.
Well, that's awesome. This has been awesome. Jordan Beeman joining us here on the Bite Meat podcast. I just want to thank you, and I want to tell everybody
Yeah.
coming up next is the Bite Meat podcast smoking hot tip of the week with Gus Johnston from Texas Star Grill Shop. We got that coming up. And I just want to thank you again, man. This has been really, really fascinating. I know a lot of people, even if they don't necessarily consistently have to come to HeartBrand, they learned a lot about what to look for
Good,
in beef.
good, good. Well, thanks so much for having me, John. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.